picture this. You're at the gym, or maybe just planning your next workout. You've got a certain weight on the bar, or you're looking at those dumbbells, right? And you're thinking, how many reps should I actually be able to crank out before I hit failure forever? Most of us have relied on that classic chart. You know the one. Maybe saw it in a textbook. Felt pretty solid, didn't it? Like the final word. But here's the thing. What if that basic knowledge, those numbers you always kind of trusted, what if they weren't quite as spot on or as complete as we all thought? Maybe even a little outdated.
That's exactly right. It's actually fascinating when you dig into it. So much of our, let's say, foundational understanding and resistance exercise programming, especially that relationship between your 1 rep max, your 1 RM, and how many reps you can do to failure. It was mostly built on, well, relatively limited studies from way back. Pioneering stuff for sure, but pretty narrow.
Right, and that's precisely why we're doing this deep dive today. We are getting into a really groundbreaking new study. It's a meta-regression, which is basically a huge analysis of almost everything published on this exact topic. Yeah. And it really updates this crucial relationship, our mission here. Cut through the noise, pull out the really important bits, the surprising facts, and give you a much clearer, sort of more nuanced understanding that you can use straight away. Think of it like upgrading the software in your strength training brain.
Yeah, and the basis for this deep dive is a very comprehensive review article. It was published in Sports Medicine just this year, 2024. The title is Maximal Number of Repetitions at Percentages of the 1 Repetition Maximum, a meta-regression and moderator analysis of sex, age, training status, and exercise. Bit of a mouthful, but it says it all. And get this. They analyzed data from 269 studies. That's involving over 7,000 people. It's a massive data set.
Wow. Okay, so for years, like we said, that standard table showing max reps at different percentages of 1 RM, that was the go-to. It was everywhere. Gym walls, textbooks, coaching manuals.
Exactly. That classic table, often linked back to Hoger and colleagues from studies in 87 and 90, it essentially gave us what we call point estimates. Just a single average number for how many reps you'd expect. But here's the critical question it didn't answer. What about the huge variation between different people? And what about the uncertainty within those estimates? The old table just ignored all that. One number, take it or leave it.
Okay, so if the old way was just that single dot on the graph, this new meta-regression sounds like it's painting the whole picture, variability and all. You said colossal effort. Yep. Just how big are we talking data-wise?
Well, let me put it in perspective. This analysis looked at 952 separate repetitions to failure tests. These were done by 7,289 individuals across 452 different groups, pulled from those 269 studies. And the studies themselves span decades from 1961 right up to 2023. It's incredibly comprehensive. Most participants were male, about 2/3, almost all healthy, 97%, mostly under 59 years old. The median age is actually 23, and about 60% were already resistance trained. Oh, and the most common exercises studied, bench press and leg press, making up 42% and 14% of the data.
That is a ton of data. Just incredible. So boiling it all down, what's the main takeaway? How does this massive data set change our understanding of that reps versus weight relationship?
Well, the core finding isn't totally surprising, you know. It confirms what we generally expect. The average number of reps you can do goes down as the percentage of your 1 RM goes up. Heavier weight, fewer reps. Simple enough. But, crucially, the new study also estimates the standard deviation. That basically tells us how much individual results tend to vary around that average. And interestingly, this variation, the spread, also tends to get smaller as the load gets heavier.
Right, so it's not just about knowing the average, but understanding the likely range for different people. That seems way more useful. You said the variation decreases at heavier loads. What does that practically mean for someone training?
Exactly that. It makes things a bit more predictable at the top end. For example, at lighter loads, say 60% of your 1 RM, the estimated standard deviation is pretty wide, maybe around 4.36 reps. But bump that up to 80% of 1 RM, and the variation tightens up, drops to about 2.51 reps. So yeah, at lighter weights, there's just more natural spread in performance. Some people might bang out way more reps than others. At heavier weights, closer to your max, people tend to be a bit more consistent relative to each other. It really helps manage expectations, whether it's for yourself or if you're coaching someone.
Okay, this is where I think it gets really interesting for most people. We naturally assume factors like age, sex, or how long someone's been lifting would massively change these numbers, right? I mean, you'd think a 25-year-old experienced lifter versus a 70-year-old beginner, totally different rep counts expected.
That's the intuitive leap most of us make, absolutely. But here's one of the most surprising findings from this huge analysis. Factors like sex, age, and they specifically compared 30-year-olds versus 70-year-olds in their models, and even general training status, so whether you're considered resistance trained or not. These showed little to no clear moderating influence on this specific relationship between 1MAR-M and reps to failure.
Wow. Okay, hold on. Little to no influence. That feels huge, counterintuitive even. So the big implication there is
It means that the general updated table this study produced, it's actually broadly applicable. You can apply it to most individuals pretty much regardless of those common demographic factors. It simplifies things massively for coaches, for trainees. The core relationship seems quite robust across these different groups. You don't necessarily need a wildly different chart for men versus women or younger versus older folks for this specific prediction.
okay, so if age, sex, and general training status aren't the big drivers of difference here, what is? What factor really changes the game in terms of how many reps you can expect?
The study found one factor stood out significantly: the type of exercise. Specifically, they found that the leg press allows for noticeably more repetitions compared to the bench press, right across the whole range of loads tested. That was a very clear, statistically significant difference.
Right, let's put some actual numbers on that for everyone listening, because this makes it really concrete. The general updated table, the one that now includes that range, that uncertainty, it gives an average estimate of about 15 reps at 70% of 1RM. Now, if you remember that old textbook table, it only listed 11 reps for that same 70% load. So for most exercises, this suggests you might actually be able to do a few more reps than you thought, especially at those moderate submaximal loads.
Exactly, but then you look at the specific exercises where we have enough data. For the bench press, the new estimates are actually pretty similar to the old table. At 70% 1RM, this new study suggests around 14 reps for the bench. That's not far off the old table's 11, considering the variability. But then you look at the leg press, and the difference is really striking. At that same 70% 1RM, the study estimates you can do, on average, around 19 repetitions on the leg press. That's way higher than the old table's 11, and also significantly more than the 14 estimated for the bench press.
19 reps. Okay, so if I've been basing my leg press sets on the old 11 rep idea, I've potentially been leaving a lot of reps in the tank. That's a massive difference, almost double. So the implication is,
Oh, but we found this.
well, it's obvious, isn't
Yeah.
it? You need exercise-specific expectations, which is why the study produced separate tables for bench and leg press.
Right. Precisely. Because the difference was so clear and consistent. So for bench press, use the bench press specific estimates. For leg press, use the leg press ones. For pretty much everything else where we don't have enough specific data yet, the main general model table is your best bet for now. It really highlights that you can't just apply one rule across all movements.
Makes sense. Were there other things the researchers wanted to look at but just couldn't due to lack of data?
Yeah, a couple of areas. They had hoped to explore if the relationship differs between, say, concentric-only lifting versus eccentric-only lifting, but there just wasn't enough data. Less than 2% of all the tests involved those specific types of muscle actions. So that remains a bit of a question mark.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it? Even with this mountain of data, there are still these gaps. What else was sort of left unexplored?
Well, similarly, there was limited data to really dig into how the speed of the repetition, the duration, might affect things, or how specific athlete populations might differ. Think endurance athletes versus pure strength or power athletes. Do they respond differently? Probably. But we need more data to quantify it reliably. So yes, it's a huge step forward, but definitely not the final word on every single nuance.
Okay, let's bring it back to the person listening right now. After absorbing all this, what does it actually mean for you in your next workout? How can you apply this info tomorrow?
I think the main thing is you can now have a much more accurate expectation for your reps. If you're hitting the leg press, you can probably push for more reps at a given weight than you might have previously assumed based on old charts. If you're benching, maybe your expectations stay closer to what you already knew, roughly. And for most other lifts, you might find you've got a few more reps in you at those moderate weights than the old rules suggested. Just having that better accuracy helps you choose the right load for the rep range you're actually aiming for. It helps optimize your programming.
Yeah, and understanding that variance too, those standard deviation numbers we talked about, it helps you manage expectations, right, for yourself or if you're coaching someone. It's okay if you don't hit the exact average number. There's a natural spread, especially at lighter loads.
Yeah.
It's about being in the ballpark, understanding that range.
Exactly. It helps avoid getting discouraged if you're slightly below average or overly confident if you're slightly above on a given day. It's all within a probable range. And looking ahead, even massive studies have limitations. The authors acknowledged their search strategy wasn't perfectly by the book for standard meta-analyses, but realistically, it still gathered vastly more data than anything done before. Also, a lot of the data, as we mentioned, came from healthy young adults. So we definitely still need more research focusing specifically on older adults, maybe clinical populations, and different types of athletes.
And more specific exercises too, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. That's a critical point. We need way more data for common lifts like the overhead press, lat pull downs, rows, triceps extensions, hamstring curls, calf raises. The list goes on to really nail down the precise REPS per-1 RM curves for those exercises. That's going to take hundreds, probably thousands more participants in future studies, so the research journey continues.
What a fantastic deep dive. It really drives home that even the most seemingly basic rules in strength training are always evolving with new science. We've gone from just a single number to this much richer picture that includes variability and, crucially, exercise differences.
It really is empowering. This knowledge gives you, the listener, more accurate tools for planning your training, for setting expectations. It helps you train smarter.
So here's something to chew on as we wrap up. If something as fundamental as seemingly settled as how many reps can you do at a certain weight can be so significantly updated and refined by a really thorough scientific look, what other pieces of fitness wisdom, maybe things you take for granted, might also be ready for a fresh look? What assumptions are you holding on to in your own training or health journey that maybe, just maybe, new data could challenge or change completely?